Welcome back to week 3, and this is a focus on element 38 of the Marzano 41 traits that are present in becoming a reflective teacher. And this particular trait might rank right up there with one of my favorites, and probably one of the best traits to focus on in terms of getting bang for your buck in controlling crisis situations in a classroom and in managing and maintaining a classroom that provides a safe environment for all students. We all know that we're going to have a student here and there, if not every semester and every year, that presents a challenging behavior or two to us, or is very assertive or maybe aggressive in the classroom. So I think that we all envision those students as being the ones that, gosh, how will we handle them? But there's also an element of setup that you have to do in your classroom to prepare for those students, that makes the classroom feel, again, like a safe environment for all of the other students for when those really challenging situations come about. So although I typically focus on teacher evidence and student evidence, and give more detail to that, I'm just going to sort of skim over that and then provide you with some specific tips for how to accomplish this, because the topic is all about maintaining objectivity and control in the classroom. And that is far more difficult to do than you would even think, unless you've already faced one of these situations in your practicum settings and you're already saying, I don't even know if I want to teach now. So let's go over some of these examples together, and I hope this is beneficial to you in your goal setting practice for this week. Teacher evidence. Teacher does not display extremes in positive and negative emotions. There is a level of predictability that comes with being this teacher. The teacher addresses inflammatory issues and events in a very calm and controlled manner. The reaction to those inflammatory comments that students might make or challenging situations that come about, the teacher maintains no extremes between positive and negative emotions, except when necessary. So that goes back to demonstrating appropriate intensity and enthusiasm. So this is where your intensity level is far more important than demonstrating some sort of extreme emotion. The teacher interacts with all students in the same calm and controlled fashion. So we all have buttons that students push. Some students push those buttons better than others, and we need to respond to all of those students in the same manner. Calm and controlled. The teacher does not demonstrate personal offense at student misbehavior. And that goes back to the buttons that students push and knowing that certain things are personally going to offend you more than others, and knowing that there are limited times when it's appropriate for you to respond with more intensity to those types of student misbehaviors. But it's knowing that you can't respond to all student misbehavior as if it is a personal affront that they have made. So student evidence is that students are actually settled by the teacher's calm demeanor. So students feel safe when you respond in a consistently calm and controlled manner. So you have to be consistent. When asked, the students describe the teacher as in control of himself or herself and in control of the class. How many of you can think of a teacher where you actually sat in that classroom and felt like the classroom was always out of control around you and you couldn't learn because you knew that there was a level of unpredictability to the teacher's responsiveness and to the behaviors of the other students, because the teacher perhaps demonstrated some extremes of positive and negative emotions and did not act in a calm and controlled manner. Additionally, when students are asked, the teacher does not hold grudges or take things personally. So I do believe that we are human and that it's really difficult not to want to take personally some things that students say and not to harbor negative feelings toward a student who really, really, again, pushes your buttons every day. So it's important that you face those feelings with individual students and you acknowledge them, and then you work that much harder to not reflect your feelings of negativity back to them. So that about the halfway mark there, that's your teacher evidence and student evidence. And I really want to touch on just a couple of other very specific tips and tricks that the book gives you. So again, bear with me while I refer back to the text, because this is not on your Padlet wall. They ask you in the text to practice self-reflection, which is the purpose of this book, Becoming a Reflective Teacher. But they ask you each day, did you properly acknowledge adherence to the rules and procedures of the classroom? So, did you acknowledge when students did the right thing? Did you also use proper consequences when students didn't adhere to those rules and consequences? Proper consequences, not just negative emotion to let them know you were upset by them not following it. Proper consequences that are clearly established. Did you take every opportunity today to actually provide positive and negative consequences for the appropriate behavior? So was there a balance? Did you balance in your reflection, your positive responses and your negative consequences, and provide both within your classroom setting? Because you really don't want to lean too far one way or the other. So the other two items, I've already talked about hot buttons, and I will tell you, I don't know that any of you in the class might consider doing this, but I did have, which if you watched another video in the past, I don't know, 2 weeks, I mentioned this particular student in relation to my story about students being seated in class. I had a student who he enjoyed getting under my skin by saying, "Woman, woman," every time that he wanted to get my attention. And he knew that it just about pushed me over the edge. And let me tell you, if my husband wants to get under my skin, he'll do the same thing because he knows that was my hot button. So please recall that if you ever consider shouting across the room at me, "Woman," because that's one of my emotional triggers, one of my hot buttons. So additionally, it's important to maintain that cool exterior even when your hot buttons are pushed. So, for example, there's a nice bullet pointed list that if anyone is interested in obtaining from me, I can provide that to you. I could post that, but I need to have someone request it so I know that someone's working on this goal. It is important that, one, you use assertive body language, you maintain eye contact. Your posture does not show that you are afraid, but it is also not aggressive. I have always thought it to be important to not cross your arms and fold them in front of you, or to point your finger and wag your finger, or lean so far forward that you are in a student's face and raising your voice. At times, it's appropriate to lean forward a bit, lower your voice, and display some of that intensity that clearly indicates that this is not appropriate behavior. If something is going on where a legitimate explanation needs to be provided and they can provide that, you need to listen. There are some students where a misunderstanding creates the scenario, and if you are too emotionally involved in your response, then you can't hear when there's a legitimate scenario, and then you're never going to regain the trust of that student again if you made a bad assumption. So you do need to listen, but you cannot be diverted by students who are blaming, denying, arguing. Children in my house sometimes do that to me too, and I practice something called a broken record. So I say, things like, if you have something you'd like me to listen to, calm your tone of voice down. If you have something you'd like me to listen to, please approach me differently. And I maintain my calm demeanor most of the time. Not when all three of them decide that they want to blame, deny, and argue, but fortunately for me, the 17-month-old, he just makes loud noises, so I just go hug him and let the other two fight it out some days. Additionally, you should maintain an appropriate distance, as I mentioned, so particularly if you have a student sort of cornered and you didn't even realize it, that can turn ugly rather quickly. So please be aware of your physical space. You are bigger than these little guys, so you need to always be aware of that effect that you have on students when you are larger than them, and you need to not be in their space chest to chest. If possible, turn sideways as a safety precaution, and don't ever block yourself into a location where they're going to feel like they need to escape and push you out of the way or hit you in order to get out of a scary or threatening situation. Also, I think that there are common mistakes that you make when you are a beginner, and I think that most of it has to do with a little bit of fear, a little bit of intimidation, and mostly just inexperience. So, if all else fails, I would encourage you in your practicum settings and in student teaching to just stop, take a deep breath, take a step back, and say, I think we need to have a moment. And then, if you need to, you can step back, ask the student if they'd like to meet with you in the hallway in a moment or meet with you in a safe place while keeping them in your line of sight if they're a student who might tend to run, and then continuing the conversation either with the support of another adult or just when you don't feel like your emotions are taking over and controlling your response. So this is not an exhaustive list of things you can try, and every scenario is different, but it is exceedingly important for you to maintain objectivity and control when you're in a classroom setting. And if you choose this as your goal for this week, I would like for you to observe how other teachers handle things, but I would like for you to maybe even think about that one student or that particular group you work with that you feel like really sort of pushes your buttons or you're uncomfortable with, or there's a really assertive, aggressive child in there. And I would like for you to choose maybe a strategy or choose to reflect upon your responses to those challenging situations in terms of your body language, facial expressions, your tone of voice, and how you struck a balance in your practicum setting, maybe then in your use of positive and negative consequences. So again, that's element 38, maintaining objectivity and control. Thank you.